Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this webinar, the second in our 3-test of a winning sales and marketing message. This week, we're focusing on test number 2, differentiate or die. So why is the differentiate or die important? Why is a winning sales message important? Because it's the tip of the spear. It's the tip of the arrowhead. It's the first thing that the customer hears, the buyer hears. And if you can make that penetrate, then everything else is going to go much better in your favor. Okay, much of what we're going to be talking about or presenting today comes from the Story War Academy, some of the lessons that we've done there. So let's review what the 3 tests are. First and foremost, your message needs to be important or emotional to the buyer, or nothing else matters, right? You don't pass that one, nothing else is going to be important. Secondly, what we're talking about today is it has to be different from your competition. And then third, credible and sticky. That'll make more sense when we get to it. Okay, have you ever seen the movie Indiana Jones, the first one, The Search of the Lost Ark? Remember the scene where Indy is in this old town and he's surrounded, and this guy comes out with a big knife and threatens Indy. What does Indy do? Takes his gun out, boom, shoots him. Well, that is what differentiation is all about. Differentiation is all about taking a gun to a knife fight. So taking a gun to a knife fight, that's all differentiation. So another one that reminds me of is this commercial. This is an old commercial from a Super Bowl commercial from many years ago. See if you can understand why it reminds me of differentiation.
Hi.
Hi.
I was marooned on an island for 5 years with this package, and I swore that I would deliver it to you because I work for FedEx.
That's very admirable. Thank you.
Hey, but by the way, what's in the package?
Nothing really. Just a satellite phone, GPS locator, fishing rod, water purifier, and some seeds. Just silly stuff. Thank you again. You keep up the good work.
You keep up the good work. Why does that remind me of differentiation? Because so many times people are sitting on so many things that are great differentiators and they don't know that it could save them. So you're really cast away unless you have those differentiators to help you in your story war, help you win more sales. So let's drill in and look at, so why, number one, making it important and emotional to the buyer. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have to understand the needs, pains, and desires of your buyer. That's all that matters to them. Needs, pains, and desires. It's pretty much that simple. Once you have that, then it's a matter of finding the differentiators to help them go through all these things and cull down the things that are most important. Once you have it culled down, then they need to understand that it's believable and sticky, and we'll talk about that one later. It's a lot like, in fact, if we wanted to just simplify it, it's really about benefits and features, those top two. Benefits to the buyer and the features of your product. It's a lot like buying milk. So let's say you decided to buy milk. That's your need, pain, or desire. I want milk. So you go to the grocery store and you find yourself looking at this. I just wanted milk. And you've got all kinds of choices to choose from. And that's pretty much what our world is right now. We have a tyranny of choice, a paralysis of choice, so much so that it really slows us down. And this is kind of what happens to your buyer. They have a need, pain, and desire, and they're approached with this. So we start thinking, okay, well, what kind of milks are there? Well, there's whole, there's organic milk, there's macadamia nut milk, there is fat-free milk, almond milk, well, let's see, lactose-free milk, cashew milk, walnut milk, buttermilk, hemp milk, and of course, chocolate milk. Well, that's too much for me. So, what is important to me? Well, let's just say I want milks made from nut products. Yeah, those four. Those are the ones I want. Now it's a matter of differentiating from there, perhaps even bringing in the credibility. And as I look at it, I think, silk. That's the one I've worked with in the past, and I've liked it. Had good past experience with silk almond milk. So that will be the one I buy. So you see how those 3 steps work, making it important, differentiated, and credible. So here's a key about differentiation that a lot of people aren't aware of. Being different does not mean you have to be unique, meaning the only one. Okay, that's a key thing. So many times when we say differentiation, people think I have to be the only one that can do this. No, you just have to be different. Well, how much different? That's a great question. That reminds me of a story. Going back to 2008 in Beijing, China, to the Olympics, Michael Phelps is in the 100-meter butterfly against Milorad Kavik. And it's a short race. Watch what happens.
Michael Phelps with his second to last swim here, which could change the face of Olympic history.
Take care of Mom.
Phelps could be in major trouble. You know Kavich is very fast.
They return.
He's 24 seconds. A great turn for Phelps. Here he comes. Phelps needs to get by Kavich. I don't know if he's going to catch him.
Watch this. Boom.
He gets it done again. He did it. He did it. He got it done again. 1/100th of a second.
The lights, the heat, and complete. Oh, I see the light and the heat.
It was tighter than 1/100th of a second. In fact, they said that Phelps beat him by the length of a sesame seed. Can you imagine that? That's how tight it was. As Kavik was coming in like this, Phelps took one more gigantic stroke with those big arms and whooshed in. So, how much did the gold place have to beat the silver by? Didn't matter. As long as they could come in first and find just the smallest bit of differentiation, that's all that mattered. Okay, let's go to some book work. Here's some great information about Jack Trout.
The next thing your buyer will be thinking is, how is this different from anything else I can get? In Jack Trout's masterpiece book, Differentiate or Die, he discussed the tyranny of choice in this digital age and the increasing need to differentiate your product from all the other options. One of his most famous quotes is, "Differentiation is one of the most important strategic and tactical activities in which companies must constantly engage. Without differentiation, a brand is no more than a commodity, which is then forced to compete on price alone." Trout went on to show the 4 poor ways to differentiate and the 8 great ways to differentiate your product. Trout's book is a timeless resource for anybody in a story war.
Okay. So, being different. But being different from what? That's key.
To properly differentiate your product or your solution, you need to consider all the alternatives your hero is considering. It might be a competitor with a new feature, or a simpler solution that is faster to implement, or the client's decision to handle the problem themselves, or a new social norm that makes your idea seem obsolete, or a less expensive competitor when all the other products look the same.
So, Jack Trout went on in his book to talk about the 4 tough ways to differentiate your product and the 8 better ways to differentiate your product. This is a fantastic exercise to do with your team. If you can pull in some of your technical people, some of your marketing, sales people, This is a great brainstorm activity. So first and foremost, we have the difficult ways to differentiate your product, and then we have the better ways. We're going to go through each one of these and we'll share some examples of it. So as we go through these, think to yourself, do I have any differentiation in this particular area? All right, first and foremost, the difficult ways. Number one, quality and customer orientation. Why would that be a difficult one? Well, what does the customer expect? The customer expects quality and customer orientation. It's a very difficult one to differentiate on. But when you think about it, some companies have been very successful at it. Think of Nordstrom's or some very high-end, high-quality products. But it takes a lot of time and energy and money to make that as a differentiator. So it's tough. Second one, creativity. If I just come up with something really weird and bizarre and creative, then I can be different. Yeah, but it doesn't always anchor itself back to the product. Okay, so it's got to go back to that first test, making it meaningful to the buyer. Third, price. I like what Ogilvy said, the guy who helped us start off the advertising age. He said, any idiot can pull their pants down and lower their price. Okay, so price is not a good differentiator. And fourth, the breadth of line. Why would that be difficult as a differentiator? Well, if breadth of line is your differentiator, it's kind of like being the jack of all trades and the master of none. But who has been successful with that? Well, companies like Amazon, Walmart, and some others like that. But think of what they have to go through to have that breadth of line of their product. All right, let's now shift over to the better way to find some of your differentiations. First and foremost, being first. This is critical. Why is being first so good? Well, they can never take it away from you. If you're the first, you're always the first. When someone else comes along, you can still be, yeah, we were the first at whatever. So that's a critical one. Ask yourself, in my product or my solution, what was I the first in? Okay, and stake your claim and always keep it. Second, maintain attribute ownership. This is a little tricky, but it's pretty simple. Think about an attribute that you own, or think about, let me give some examples. Finger licking good, Kentucky Fried Chicken, or Altoids, the Little Mint candy, curiously strong. Is there some attribute or trait that you can claim, you can own? You're the orangest, you're the oldest, you're the most recent, you are the one for people from Tennessee. Okay, look at the attributes. Hopefully it's something that's important to your buyer, and then claim it. That is attribute ownership. Okay, being the leader. We have the most clients. We have the largest market share. We have the largest sales. Now think of companies that have been leaders, okay? Hertz, United, Delta, and things like that. So where are you the leader? Maybe there's an industry analyst that calls you a thought leader, or they say you're the best product. So any place you can claim to be a leader, take it. Then you have a history. What is your history? Where do you come from? What's your backstory? That can be very important. Where did you come from? Making your differentiator, okay? Ones that do this very well are wines and other types of legacy products like that. Next, being a specialist or specializing in your market. You have a niche that no one else does, okay? Maybe you're the ones that cater to bowling alleys, or you cater to people who love cats, or something like that. But find an area where maybe you've started, maybe it's your background, you're a specialist. Claim that as a differentiator and show how it would be important to your buyer. Then being the preferred provider. Well, 9 out of 10 dentists choose this particular toothpaste, or referrals or testimonials. These are an example of being a preferred provider for different types of people. Then made in a special way, made in America, handmade, or it's made with carbon fiber, or it's made with AI, whatever it is, how do you make your product? If it's a software product, something about your programmers and how they do it, the language that they use, or the process, or the how you map your, are you using an agile type of workflow? Okay. And last, being hot. Being hot just means just that. It's something new. It's something that others haven't had. That's a great one. However, the being hot is a short-term differentiator. So don't count on that one all the time. All right. So that's a list of the 4 tough ways to differentiate and the 8 better ways to differentiate. Like I said, this is a great exercise to go through with your team, especially if you have a cross-functional team, and just brainstorm. Spend time on the very first one, quality and customer orientation. How can we claim some kind of differentiation there? And just share it, write it on a flip chart, write it on a whiteboard until you fill up several, and then prioritize through all those which ones you think are your best ones. Okay, now coming off of that, let's look at, this reminds me of a friend of mine I used to work with.
I once worked for a man that ran much of the marketing for Mars Incorporated, the M&M company. The way he described differentiation was standing in front of the candy shelves at the store, and as you reach out to grab one, what causes you to go from one candy to another or another? This is differentiation.
Same thing with the milk. Why would I go to the cashew? Why would I go to the silk, or so on? Now, let's take a look at some experts with differentiation. And sometimes we have to go back. One of the best people who did this was Steve Jobs with Apple. He did this like nobody else. And when they launched the iPhone back in 2007, they had some fantastic differentiation. I'm going to pull 2 clips from that initial presentation, and you can see how well the differentiation. What I want you to look for is look for contrast. Look for anytime they contrast how the other guys do it and how we do it, and see what kind of distance they place between those. All right, here's the first one.
Now, why do we need a revolutionary user interface? I mean, here's 4 smartphones, right? Motorola Q, the BlackBerry, Palm Treo, Nokia E62, the usual suspects. And what's wrong with their user interfaces? Well, the problem with them is really sort of in the bottom 40 there. It's this stuff right here. They all have these keyboards that are there whether you need them or not to be there. And they all have these control buttons that are fixed in plastic and are the same for every application. Well, every application wants a slightly different user interface, a slightly optimized set of buttons just for it. And what happens if you think of a great idea 6 months from now? You can't run around and add a button to these things. They're already shipped. So what do? It doesn't work because the buttons and the controls can't change. They can't change for each application, and they can't change down the road if you think of another great idea you want to add to this product. Well, how do you solve this? It turns out we have solved it. We solved it in computers 20 years ago. We solved it with a bitmap screen that could display anything we want, put any user interface up, and a pointing device. We solved it with the mouse, right? We solved this problem. So how are we going to take this to a mobile device? Well, what we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. A giant screen.
Now, I know this might seem anticlimactic for most of you, but there was a time when all phones had buttons or even rotary dials. And to see a phone with no button was just astonishing to all of us. But did you notice how he took the competition and really painted them into a corner based upon their design? And then he leapfrogged them and said, we have no buttons. All right, now watch what he does here. And he uses a great visual here to highlight 2 traits. This is attribute ownership, where Apple wanted to take command with this new product called the iPhone.
Let me talk about a category of things. The most advanced phones are called smartphones. So they typically combine a phone plus some email capability, plus they say it's the internet, sort of the baby internet, into one device, and they all have these plastic little keyboards on them. The problem is that they're not so smart and they're not so easy to use. So if you kind of make a Business School 101 graph of the smart axis and the easy to use axis, phones, regular cell phones are kind of right there. They're not so smart and they're, not so easy to use. But smartphones are definitely a little smarter, but they actually are harder to use. They're really complicated. Just for the basic stuff, people have a hard time figuring out how to use them. Well, we don't want to do either one of these things. What we want to do is make a leapfrog product that is way smarter than any mobile device has ever been and super easy to use. This is what iPhone is, okay? So we're going to reinvent the phone.
Everybody thought, who is Apple to reinvent the phone? All right. But do you see how well he painted the other guys into a certain spot, and he claimed two traits, easy and smart, and he showed visually on a map how it was going to be different. Okay, let me share with you an example from my own professional world, and this is in the oil and gas space. And this particular, well, I'll show you the video. They'll explain the situation there. Now, there'll be an arrowhead here that we haven't talked much about, but just stick with the theme here.
A client of mine in the oil and gas space sold a very expensive safety valve that protects oil rigs from catastrophic leaks. Cheaper competitor safety valves stole their market share and made it difficult for them to justify their higher price. Things went from bad to worse when their salespeople doubled down with more technical presentations describing their rigid testing process. The general manager was doubtful of their safety valve product and the team making, marketing, and selling it. But things began to shift in a big way after helping them craft their arrowhead message with their buyer, the rig manager, as the hero. The arrowhead led with the rig manager's pain of uncertainty and risk and his desired gain of reliable safety, but it also gave the salesperson a better context to show some of the unique technical features and why it justified a more expensive price. Sales and marketing began using the narrative of when reliability really matters and used photos of catastrophic oil leaks, then spoke about the real cost of going with a cheap safety valve and contrasted that with the peace of mind that comes when you have a safety valve that is both trusted and proven. Their sales guys became more confident in talking with the rig managers. They even addressed price concerns with other examples where a person might pay a little extra in order to have greater quality and reliability, like a heart surgeon, which is a good comparison when you're talking about valves. This arrowhead message became the unifying chorus for both sales and marketing and their engineering teams and their executives. They went from selling 80 safety valves to over 315 safety valves the following year, and they maintained those numbers for 3 years. Their market share grew to 80%, and when the general manager saw the increased sales and margin, he personally thanked each member of the team. That was my favorite part.
So, company started off with a product. They came to me and said, it's becoming commoditized. Everybody has a self-contained subsurface safety valve, and it's lowering our price. Well, they just needed to find where they were different and why that difference was important. Here's an example of this is a great example of this commercial of finding a feature and then showing the benefit of the feature. Now, albeit they probably go a little over the top with it, but it's fun.
The new satellite with Sleep and Charge and Resolution Plus. If we don't include the Impact Smart hard drive, we can ship today.
No. That satellite has to have an Impact Smart hard drive.
The all-new Toshiba Satellite series. We thought of everything.
Oh, I love that one. Okay, so let's switch into the Q&A portion. So folks, if you have some questions, go ahead and click on the Q&A on the screen there and go ahead and type your questions. Okay, I see one question here already. All right, if you have a brand that does not differentiate and then do, how does that company team handle that shift in their messaging to the marketplace, act like a new market message? Not certain I understand that. If you have a brand that does not differentiate and then do, how does that company team handle that shift in their messaging to the marketplace, act like it's a new market? Can you clarify that question for me? How do you announce that to the market? Okay, how do you announce a new differentiation to the market? Press releases, demos, trade shows, and so forth. And really, it's how you take that message and then claim it. Part of what we're going to be talking about next week is that third test, making it credible and making it stick. So are you just going to put a press release out there with just the words, or are you going to dramatize it somehow? And that's what spikes are all about. And we'll talk about that next week. All right. Another question was, what if price is all you have? What if you truly are a commodity product? Well, this is where you've got to search and find. Search your product. Is there anything that you can find differentiation in? And if it truly is a commoditized product, then you have to look at how is the product delivered through service. Find other areas where the customer's experience where you can add value and use that as your differentiation. And sometimes it's just all in a matter of how you tell your story. You may be selling the exact same product as everybody else, but if you tell the story better with more credibility and confidence, you're going to win. I mean, have you ever lost a sales deal to an inferior product? That's what they're doing there. All right, next question. The question is, how do we best find our technical products differentiators? Well, that's sitting down with your technical people. Generally, they're the ones that understand where the differentiation is. It may be a little hard to get them to explain what it means to the customer, but that's probably bringing sales, marketing, and your technical people together, doing that brainstorm. How is our product different? And just capture everything. And then the question you ask after is, why would the customer care about this? Why is that important? All right, time for one more question. Okay, what if your product really is like everybody else's? Okay, I think we covered that. Find your differentiation with how the product is delivered, with service, or whatever. Okay, so next week, we're going to be covering the third test, and we'll be getting into credibility and stickiness. How do you get your street cred? And then we're going to introduce a cool tool called Spikes. We're not going to talk much about it, but that's going to be the introduction for our next series of webinars, Spikes. You will love Spikes. Okay, next steps, folks. If you want to get onto my calendar and talk to me about how the Story War Academy or how I might be of helpful to your team, go to that link. I'll be sending this out in an email tomorrow as well. Or if you'd like to learn more about the Story War Academy, go to that link there. Okay, once again, that'll be coming out in an email to you tomorrow. All right, we just handled our Q&A. All right, last question or last video before we close up. Just because everybody else uses it doesn't mean that it's a good product. that one. Folks, thank you for participating in our webinar today. Have a fantastic day. Be your best story, and I'll see you next week.